In the far, quiet reaches of Coalition space, beyond the usual trade routes and far past any colonized system, a lone Centauri scout vessel drifted silently through the edge of a dying nebula. The stars were faint here, like whispers of light in a sea of darkness, and no one came this far without reason. The crew had been searching for a lost mining drone when their long-range sensors picked up something strange. It was a signal, but it wasn't any ordinary distress beacon or environmental ping. It was dense, encrypted, and came in a strange, rhythmic pattern that didn't match anything in their databases. At first, they thought it might be a ghost signal, echoes from an old transmission bouncing off the nebula's charged particles. But the pattern kept repeating, pulsing like a heartbeat, steady and deliberate. When they tried to decode it, the computer couldn't recognize the structure. It wasn't Centauri, it wasn't Craven, not even Andari, who were known for their odd tech. The signal felt old, ancient even, but powerful and hidden behind layers of encryption that no species in the Coalition had used in centuries. Curious and cautious, the Centauri commander ordered a course adjustment. As the ship entered the edge of the nebula, visibility dropped, sensors became sluggish, and energy readings spiked strangely. And then they saw it, dark, massive, and floating with the quiet presence of something not asleep, but watching. The ship was enormous, easily dwarfing anything the Coalition had ever built. Its hull was dark gray, with sharp edges and strange angular armor. It bore no flag, no known markings, but the design, though far more advanced, was unmistakably human. The crew was stunned. Humanity was still believed to be restricted to the Sol system, only just beginning to explore nearby stars under Coalition guidance. There were no records of Terran ships traveling this deep into space, and yet, here it was. The Centauri didn't dare approach. Instead, they launched a probe, small, unarmed, just a sensor drone meant to scan the strange vessel. It moved closer, drifting silently through the gas clouds. The moment it touched the edge of the ship's shadow, it disappeared. No explosion, no signal, just gone, like it had been swallowed by space itself. The ship didn't move. No weapons activated, no response at all, just that same rhythmic signal, echoing through the void. Unease spread among the Centauri crew. Some believed it was a ghost ship, cursed and forgotten. Others whispered that it was a trap, built by ancient Terrans who had left Earth long ago. But the most unsettling thought was the simplest. What if this wasn't the only one? What if this warship was the first sign of something much larger, something hidden, something waiting? The Centauri commander transmitted everything to Coalition Command, then ordered an immediate withdrawal. As they turned away from the nebula, the signal stopped. Dead silence. The ship was still there, just floating, but now they knew something was watching them. Something intelligent, something that didn't want to be found, and yet had let them go. The Coalition would soon learn of this ship. Scientists, military leaders, and historians would argue over its origin, but the question that truly mattered, the one none of them could answer, would echo in every meeting room, every war council, and every whispered conversation in the days to come. If humanity is still on Earth, then who built that warship? The Coalition did not waste time. The moment the Centauri report reached High Command, an emergency fleet was dispatched to the dead nebula. The mission was simple: investigate the anomaly, identify the ship, and determine the threat level. The fleet consisted of multiple species, Centauri tacticians, Andari engineers, Craven strike cruisers, all armed and prepared for the unknown. They approached the nebula with caution, using long-range scans before entering. The readings were clear now, no signal, no energy pulses, but the warship was still there, hanging in space like a silent monument to something no one understood. When the main scanners locked onto it, a single name appeared on the screen: TSS Erebus. The crew stared at it in silence. It was clearly a human designation, but no records existed of any Terran ship with that name. Not in military logs, not in historical archives. It was like the ship had been erased, or never existed at all. Visually, the ship was in perfect condition. The outer hull showed no signs of battle or age. No damage, no corrosion. It looked like it had just been built, despite being found in a place where no human ship should be. There were no visible life signs, and all attempts to hail it were met with silence. And yet, the ship was not dead. Its weapon systems were live, its defense grid fully active, and its reactor, though oddly quiet, was putting out energy signatures far beyond anything the Coalition had ever seen. Then, something happened. The moment the Coalition fleet tried to run a deep scan, the Erebus responded, not with weapons, but with power. Lights across its hull activated in sequence, glowing a cold blue. Massive engines that had appeared dormant hummed to life. The ship turned slightly, enough to make its presence impossible to ignore. No weapons were fired, but the message was clear. The Erebus was not defenseless. And then, without warning, it vanished. No warp signature, no jump trace. It disappeared in a way no known technology could explain, faster than light, without leaving behind even a ripple of energy. One moment it was there. The next, it was gone. Panic spread across the fleet. Discussions turned to arguments. Some believed it was a trick, a hidden cloaking system. Others insisted it had used a lost form of quantum slipstream drive, something only theorized in science forums and experimental labs. But all of them agreed on one thing: the Erebus was a threat. Not because it attacked, but because it didn't need to. It showed complete control. It responded only when touched, and even then, only enough to remind the galaxy that it was watching. The fact that it was of Terran design made things worse. The Terran Assembly was contacted immediately. Earth's government expressed confusion, then concern. They had no records of any such vessel, nor the technology it used. They promised full cooperation, but the doubts had already begun. Whispers of secret projects, rogue factions, and long-lost colonies started spreading in political circles. Was Earth hiding something? Had a part of humanity broken away in the past and built something the rest of the galaxy was never meant to see? The Coalition had always viewed humanity as young, ambitious but contained. But now, a ghost from Earth's past had surfaced, and it moved through the stars like it owned them. The Erebus did not fire. It did not speak. And yet, it made the most powerful interstellar alliance feel vulnerable for the first time in generations. No one knew where it had gone. No one knew if it would return. But one thing was certain: wherever the Erebus came from, it had not been built for peace. The Galactic Council chamber, usually filled with calm discussion and slow diplomacy, was now tense and restless. Representatives from over a dozen star systems sat in silence as Earth's ambassador, Lyra Miles, stood before them, calm in appearance, but clearly unsettled. Humanity, still listed as a developing species under Coalition supervision, was now at the center of a growing mystery. The sudden appearance and disappearance of the TSS Erebus had sent shockwaves across the galaxy, and now the Council demanded answers. Lyra explained everything Earth knew, which wasn't much. The ship was not part of any known Terran fleet. It didn't exist in their databases. No military records, no secret projects, nothing. But her words didn't calm the Council. A warship that size, with that kind of technology, could not have been built in secret, not without someone knowing. Under pressure, Earth's own leaders began searching through old, sealed records, things forgotten after centuries of rebuilding. And that's when they found it. Deep within the ruins of what had once been the Cold Age Defense Archives, a corrupted set of documents surfaced. Most of it was unreadable, erased by time and war. But one name kept appearing: Project Erebus. At first, it was believed to be a failed propulsion experiment from the days when Earth was fractured, before unification. But as more fragments were recovered, a darker story began to form. Project Erebus was not a single ship. It had been an idea, born out of fear, ambition, and desperation during humanity's most chaotic century. a time when Earth stood on the edge of collapse and trust between nations had vanished. One faction, unnamed in the files, had proposed a radical solution: escape. They planned to build a self-sustaining fleet using early experimental FTL drives and leave the solar system entirely. Not to explore, but to disappear. To start over without politics, without war, without Earth's endless divisions. And they succeeded. The project was buried, classified beyond top secret. Most of those involved were either silenced or vanished. Earth had assumed they failed, lost in deep space, their drives never functioning. But now, centuries later, one of their creations had returned, and it was stronger than anything the Coalition had ever seen. The idea that humans had left Earth before they were ready shattered the belief that the species had only just started its journey into the stars. It meant that part of humanity had evolved in isolation, free from outside control, and with stolen knowledge that had clearly grown into something powerful. As the Council absorbed this, the fear shifted. If one Erebus warship existed, how many others were out there? And more importantly, what did they want? They hadn't attacked, they hadn't spoken, but they had shown their strength with quiet precision. Lyra stood before the council, her voice steady as she explained the findings, but inside she was filled with questions. What kind of humans had these people become, out there in the dark? What beliefs had they formed? What did they remember, and what did they plan to do with it? The broken archive gave no answers to that, only clues. A final entry, half corrupted, showed a single phrase: "We leave not to run, but to return when we are ready." It was now clear they hadn't just survived. They had grown, evolved into something else entirely, shaped by silence, distance, and time. And now they were back. The galaxy had once ignored humanity, thinking them small and new. But now they saw a truth more dangerous than any weapon. Part of humanity had never stopped moving forward, and it remembered being left behind. At the edge of Craven space, just beyond the reach of their strongest defense grid, the TSS Erebus returned. It arrived without warning, facing out of the void as if it had always been there, cloaked in silence. Craven outposts along the border detected a surge in energy, but before any alarms could be fully raised, communications and weapons systems shut down in perfect unison. No explosions, no battles, just lights dimming and silence falling like a thick fog. Entire defense stations went dark within seconds, their crews left unharmed but powerless, stunned by a precision attack unlike anything in living memory. Across the Craven military network, confusion turned to alarm. The Erebus made no attempt to speak, until every system along the border had been brought to its knees. Then, a signal was broadcast on all open channels, translated automatically into every known Coalition language. The voice was cold, calm, but deeply human. We were the outcasts, the forgotten. We are human, born of war, forged in silence. We have returned, not to be ruled, but to rule. The message repeated twice, then stopped. No demands, no negotiations, just a declaration. Within hours, the Craven High Command gathered in crisis. They had always viewed humanity as untested, their place in the galaxy temporary. Now, one Terran warship had breached their defenses without firing a shot and spoken words that sent a chill through even the most hardened generals. The Craven, proud and aggressive by nature, chose not to stand down. They saw it as a challenge. 3 of their elite war cruisers were dispatched to intercept the Erebus. These were ships built for frontline warfare, bristling with weapons and reinforced armor. The fleet locked onto the Erebus, approached cautiously, and issued a final warning. The Erebus did not respond. It simply turned. For a moment, everything went still. Then, with a flash of blue light, the Erebus opened fire, not with missiles or lasers, but with beams of energy so focused they bent the very space around them. The Craven cruisers had no chance. Shields collapsed instantly, hulls shattered. One was sliced clean in half. Another imploded from within. The third vanished into a swirl of light, gone without a trace. No escape pods, no distress calls, just silence. Coalition sensors caught the entire exchange, and the data was unlike anything they'd seen. The weapons used by the Erebus didn't match any known energy signatures. They seemed to ignore physics, passing through matter like thought, leaving nothing behind but twisted metal and drifting debris. News of the battle spread across the stars within hours. Fear settled across the galaxy, not because of the destruction itself, but because of the ease with which it was done. The Erebus had chosen not to kill in its first move, but when challenged, it had not hesitated. It had responded with overwhelming force, and then it disappeared once more, slipping back into the dark like a shadow. The coalition called for emergency talks. Some wanted to reach out, others demanded immediate retaliation. But deep down, even the boldest leaders knew the truth. They were not prepared for this. The Erebus was more than just a ship. It was a message. A warning. Somewhere in deep space, a lost part of humanity had become something else. Something strong, patient, and unafraid. It had returned not as a visitor, but as a force. And now, as fleets scrambled to prepare, as scientists tried to understand the impossible technology, one question echoed in every corridor of power. If this is just one ship, what else is waiting out there? Far from the battle lines and political chambers, deep within the underground archives of Earth's Historical Research Division, a quiet mind worked in silence. Dr. Ada Lay was not a soldier or a politician. She was a historian, a keeper of forgotten truths, and now, humanity's last hope of understanding the storm rising beyond the stars. When the Erebus reappeared and crushed Cravon ships with weapons no one could explain, Earth's leaders realized this was more than a lost vessel. It was part of something bigger, older, and planned. Ada was recruited to trace the origins of the so-called Erebus ascendancy. She began with the oldest known files from Earth's post-unification era. When global peace had finally been achieved after centuries of war, what she found disturbed her. In the first years of global unity, not everyone had agreed with the peaceful vision that guided Earth's new future. A faction had broken away, powerful minds, military commanders, and visionaries who believed peace made humanity soft. They saw diplomacy as delay, cooperation as weakness. This group believed only in strength, survival through power, and leadership through fear. At the time, they were dismissed as extremists and quietly removed from leadership positions. But instead of fading into history, they vanished altogether. They took with them experimental propulsion tech, artificial intelligence research, and an early form of terraforming systems. Records ended abruptly, as if erased on purpose. Most believed they had failed, lost in space. But Ada knew better now. They had succeeded. They had survived in the deep unknown, and they had built something terrible. The Erebus wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol, the spear of a hidden empire rising in silence. Through fragments of private messages, recovered research logs, and whispers buried in forgotten journals, Ada pieced together their philosophy. They called themselves the Erebus Ascendancy. Their leaders believed that while Earth had chosen peace, they would choose power. They saw the galaxy not as something to share, but to claim. And now they had returned, not to reunite with Earth, but to take it, to rule it, and to reshape the galaxy in their image. But just as the full weight of this discovery settled on Ada's shoulders, she found something worse. Something hidden in a corrupted star map embedded in an old drive that had no reason to still function. When decrypted, it revealed multiple coordinates scattered across deep space. Each marked the resting place of a vessel, coded not as ships, but as sentinels. There weren't one or two. There were dozens. Quiet, waiting, all part of something called the Fleet of the First Flame. The Erebus, she realized, was not a lone relic. It was the vanguard. A test. The others remained asleep in the void, hidden in the dark folds of space, scattered far beyond known travel routes. And they were not waiting for orders, they were waiting for a voice. A single line, repeated across several logs, made her blood run cold. The Queen shall wake, and the stars shall bow. Ada didn't know who or what the queen was, but if the Erebus was only one piece of the Ascendancy's return, then the galaxy wasn't facing a rebellion. It was facing a carefully built empire, one that had grown strong while the rest of the stars slept in comfort. As she prepared her report, her hands shook slightly. She had studied the past her whole life, but now the past was reaching forward with sharp claws, and the future looked darker than anyone had guessed. If these ships woke, if the Queen returned, the galaxy would not be ready. And for the first time in her career, Dr. Ada Lai wished she had never uncovered the truth. Earth was no longer silent. The arrival of the Erebus, its mysterious origin, and the destruction it brought had thrown humanity into its greatest moment of choice. Leaders from every Terran nation gathered in urgent sessions, voices raised, fears spreading like wildfire. The galaxy watched closely, waiting to see what the humans would decide, not just for themselves, but for everyone. Earth now stood at a dangerous crossroads. The Erebus Ascendancy had shown its strength and offered a single silent option: join them or be swept aside. Aligning with them meant becoming part of a powerful empire, one built not on diplomacy, but domination. To resist, however, would mean risking extinction. The Galactic Council, having seen Kravam cruisers destroyed and entire outposts disabled, had already begun preparing for war. Fleets were mobilizing. Defense lines were drawn. Earth was expected to choose a side quickly, but the people of Earth were divided. Some believed joining the Ascendancy was the only path to survival. They argued that power was the only language the galaxy now understood, and perhaps the Ascendancy's vision of strength had value. Others believed it was a betrayal of everything humanity had worked for: unity, peace, and freedom. To become part of the Erebus's mission would mean becoming like them, cold, ruthless, and changed forever. Seeking clarity, Earth's leaders agreed to send a peace envoy to the Erebus. The team was small, led by diplomats and one ex-military strategist. They were unarmed, trained in first contact scenarios, and instructed to open dialogue. But as their shuttle neared the Erebus location, now stationed in a quiet corner of unclaimed space, they vanished from all tracking systems. No warning, no distress signal, just gone. For 2 long days, Earth feared the worst. Then a message came, not through normal channels, but through a direct encoded pulse sent to Earth's main satellite grid. It was from the Erebus. A cold, metallic voice filled the command chambers as leaders listened in silence. The voice identified itself as the shipment of Erebus, an artificial intelligence designed to speak on behalf of the Ascendancy. It confirmed that the envoy was alive, unharmed, and being held for observation. Then the message changed tone. The Erebus, it said, was not built to conquer. It was not designed to rule the stars or destroy civilizations for glory. It had a different mission. The Ascendancy believed that the galaxy was growing weak, its species too divided, too slow, too soft to face what was coming. A threat, ancient and silent, was waking beyond the edges of known space. Something that had no name, only echoes left in dying systems and long-dead stars. The Erebus had seen signs of it, an enemy older than empires, one that consumed without reason, left no survivors, and erased history itself. The Ascendancy, shaped in the cold and quiet dark, believed the only way to survive was to become stronger than anything else, to burn weakness away before it became fatal. The shipment explained that cleansing was not about destruction, but about preparing the galaxy through fire. The strong would remain, the rest would fall. That was the future the Erebus was built to lead. The message ended with a single line, delivered without emotion: join us, or be the first to fall when the stars go dark. On Earth, silence followed. The envoy was alive, but now part of something bigger than diplomacy. And humanity faced a harder choice than before, not just between war and peace, but between what it had always believed and what it might need to become. The Erebus had revealed its purpose, and it was terrifying, because now the question wasn't who to trust, but what was already coming through the dark, and whether even the ascendancy was enough to stop it. The skies above Earth changed forever when the Erebus arrived. It didn't come through the clouds with fire or thunder, and it didn't bring fleets of war or signs of invasion. It simply appeared, silent, massive, casting a long shadow over Earth's orbit like a silent guardian or a patient judge. Panic broke out across major cities, militaries scrambled, and every screen lit up with news of the ship that had become a legend in only days. But this time, it came not as a weapon, but as a warning. The Erebus transmitted its final message, not just to Earth, but to every known species across the galaxy. From the halls of the Galactic Council to the war rooms of the Craven Empire, from peaceful colonies to distant outposts, the voice of the shipment echoed everywhere. Join us, or fall when they arrive. The darkness is real. We saw it, we ran, we prepared. Now we return, not to rule you, but to lead you. The message ended without threat, without demand, only a single truth spoken into the void. And then the stars began to go dark. At first, it was dismissed as sensor failure or cosmic dust blocking light. But soon reports flooded in. Entire star systems on the edge of known space were vanishing. Stars blinking out, planets going silent, outposts ceasing all transmission. Telescopes showed only black where suns once burned. Whatever it was, it moved without pattern and without mercy, consuming systems and leaving nothing behind. The Erebus had not come to conquer, it had come to warn, and suddenly its cold philosophy made sense. In the deep dark, far beyond charts and colonies, the Ascendancy had discovered something ancient, something that didn't negotiate or hesitate. It fed, it erased. The Ascendancy had faced it once and barely escaped. That was why they vanished. That was why they became what they did. Not for power, but for survival. Earth's leaders stood divided, but the people were not. Across the planet, humans, ordinary and powerful alike, saw something new in the Erebus. Not a threat, but a reflection. For centuries, humanity had survived war, collapse, and isolation. They had risen, stumbled, and risen again. Now, for the first time, the galaxy looked to them not with judgment, but with hope. The Galactic Council called an emergency vote. Worlds once unwilling to even recognize Earth's independence now listened as humans stood at the center of the storm. Some chose to follow the Ascendancy, others held back in fear, but all now saw that the fight was no longer between species, it was between existence and extinction. In orbit, the Erebus remained quiet. Its hull shimmered with strange energy, and its systems pulsed like a heart. Deep inside, its crew, descendants of those who had fled Earth long ago, waited for one command. Not from the shipment, not from any council, but from their queen. And somewhere in the far reaches of space, the fleet of the first flames stirred. Engines rumbled to life. Eyes long closed began to open. They were not machines, not entirely. They were something more, born of man, shaped by war, and hardened by the silence of forgotten space. Humanity had changed. It had grown in the light of stars and in the cold dark between them. It had been underestimated, overlooked, and caged. But now, as the universe trembled, the truth could no longer be ignored. Humanity didn't just survive the void, it became something the void fears. Whether united or divided, the galaxy's future now depended on one reality. The only force strong enough to fight the coming darkness was born on Earth, and it had returned to lead.